Hello, and welcome to Orbis's webinar on recession, resiliency, and the importance of clarity. A bit of housekeeping before we start. We love questions, but you'll be muted throughout the webinar, so please submit any questions you have using the questions pane on your screen, and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible at the end of the call. I'm very excited to be hosting this webinar today. My name is Alyssa Merritt, and today's webinar is Recession, Resiliency, and the Importance of Clarity. I'm joined by two speakers with unique perspectives into the importance of business resilience. We've got Tim Nixon, who is the global lead for Teneo's technology strategy and transformation practice. Welcome, Tim. And we've also got Ollie Hecker, Chief Customer Officer at Orbis Software. So over the last 3 years, there's been some new challenges that seem to have popped up for every business that people have had to navigate over the last 3 years or so. And it seems like financial recession is the next big curveball that all of us are going to have to dodge. When you look at the news, recently the BBC News announced that the bank's recession warning matters to everyone. And this was after the Bank of England had forecasted that the UK will fall into recession towards the end of the year. And in the US economy had its second quarter of negative growth, and the Federal Reserve has started to raise rates to tame inflation. And even the UN has been speaking up about the possibility of recession. So on a recent webpage for the UN News, they reported that the outlook worsens as global recession looms. And the IMF was saying that the world may soon be teetering on the edge of a global recession only 2 years after the last one. So Tim and Ollie, this doesn't look too great, whether we're in the midst of a global recession or not. What are some of the challenges that businesses are planning for as economies slow? Tim, it would be great if you could start.
Yeah, so Alyssa, I'm sorry to say I kind of share a lot of the negativity of the headlines you've just read out. Whether or not this ends up technically in a recession, and I think it will, some form of slowdown is highly likely. I think what's more worrying is that comes alongside a series of inflationary pressures and labour shortages in a kind of series of markets, which actually means it's going to be, I think, a much more challenging period of time for businesses than just a straight up recession. So I think what we're going to have is the sort of double whammy in many industries of declining sales, but actually in a period of stagflation that could be coupled with rising costs, and in particular I suspect a lot of rising costs, particularly in Western economies, linked to labour. That double pressure is just going to cause a whole series of financial challenges for businesses across a kind of wide range of sectors, B2C sectors, B2B sectors, wherever they are in the economy. And I think, as with COVID, necessity is going to be the mother of invention. Right? In that period of difficulty, we're going to see a lot of organizations think about how they can digitize, how they can automate, either because they see it as a route, frankly, to doing more with less and reducing cost, or because they're kind of forced to innovate in terms of how they build their kind of digital delivery models or new revenue streams. So I think it's going to have quite a profound effect, if I'm honest, on boardroom discussions and boardroom strategy in a whole variety of ways, all ultimately born out of the fact I think we're in for a rocky ride.
Ollie, you're seeing this play out on a tactical level with the people who are actually helping to enable digital transformation and change. What are some of the challenges you're seeing with the potential of a recession?
Yeah, well, definitely echo, unfortunately, Tim's view that, I think we are, if we're not already in a recession, certainly headed into one. But Microsoft, Airbnb, IBM, General Motors, General Electric, Disney, a few names come to mind. These are companies that were either born or grew significantly during recessions. So, do recessions bring intense challenges and risk? Will every business emerge from a recession? No, they won't. But it's also a fantastic opportunity for some. I think the questions that organizations must ask is how well positioned they are to adapt to the economic context, and also continue, of course, to delight their customers and to innovate. And basically, what you need to do in a recession, I don't think is hugely different to what you should be doing outside of a recession, but you need to do more with less, as Tim says, and the pressure to succeed is much greater because the stakes are so much higher. Now, we know that digitally mature organizations and maturing organizations are inherently more agile because they're more data informed, they're more self-aware, they're more efficient, they're ultimately better at quickly, translating strategy to execution. And executive teams, I think, across most industries, Tim, perhaps you agree, I think exec teams know this. So I don't think we're going to see wholesale defunding of transformation programs. On the contrary, I read some results from a recent big survey of top execs around the world in the wake of the pandemic, and it was 85% of respondents who said that digital initiatives were key to staying economically viable by 2023. Nevertheless, the problem is, even with the right intent, many transforming organizations, many transformation programs falter because they simply don't have good knowledge of themselves. Organizations don't have that knowledge, that their internal systems, their processes, their people, information, how it all fits together. So transformation initiatives can often feel like a Pandora's box, which is bad.
I mean, Orbis is an enterprise architecture platform, and we know that EA is really one of the best ways to provide visibility for both business and IT stakeholders to understand what's happening across the enterprise to make strategic decisions. So, Ollie, I'd love for you to give me a little bit more context about what you're really seeing with EA and practices like business process management and IT portfolio management, how that's really helping and impacting decision-making across the organizations.
Yeah, well, enterprise architecture fundamentally is about helping businesses understand themselves, and then using that understanding to plan for and deliver change effectively. So, coming back to that Pandora's box analogy, ditching Pandora's box and moving quickly from strategy to execution. So, as Tim and I both touched on, technology, digital transformation, so central now to just competitive advantage generally. The stakes are very high in terms of delivering the benefits of these change programs. So with this in mind, businesses leveraging EA can deliver their transformations and realize their strategic objectives, as we see frequently at Orbis, with less risk than organizations that ignore enterprise architecture. Now, those objectives could be technology cost reduction, post-merger integration, launching a new product or service. EA can help you with all of these things, and that's exactly the sort of business outcomes. These are the business outcomes that we see among Orbis customers. Now, Orbis recently partnered with Forrester Research to analyze the economic impact of architecture functions that use our platform, and the results were quite compelling. So Forrester found that organizations using our platform made a 95% time saving when it came to decision analysis. That's what to do. And executives made an 85% time saving on reviewing architectural information. So delivering change is obviously about making good decisions quickly. And these statistics absolutely endorse the impact of EA on that clarity and agility. Even more starkly, if you look at it from a bottom line perspective, Forrester found that users of our platform could sunset an average of 20% of their applications over 3 years. And that's huge if you think about the money that companies are spending these days on their IT budgets. So stepping back, if EA helps organizations do this, then it's very difficult to argue that the architecture isn't crucial.
Well, thank you, Ollie. And Tim, you're in a really unique position as the global lead for technology strategy and transformation. So what's really helping to make these changes happen in your experience at Teneo? What are you seeing that's working?
So I think the last few years have clearly demonstrated the value of preparation. If I look across my customer base, my client base, our client base at Teneo, there were organizations that, I don't think any organization would say that they dealt with the pandemic kind of effortlessly. Mm-hmm. But if we take something as simple as the desktop and the ability to relocate employees home, okay, an extraordinary change happening almost overnight, there were those organizations for whom, I would say we were one of them, this was a non-issue, right? A level of preparation and architecture, not for the pandemic scenario. I mean, I've not met a single person who was planning for pandemic, but it was those organizations that had enabled flexible working, had decided to de-risk their office infrastructure. And so, right, everyone's going to work from, it's easy. I've got other clients for whom this was an existential threat because they hadn't prepared, they hadn't given any thought to the resiliency or the setup that they had. And they've been effectively just stuck doing the same old things. So for me, the pandemic has woken people up to the value of preparation. And we've talked about the recession. I mean, I'll use another example. I mean, I have a large number of technology clients who tragically had their operations terribly disrupted due to what's going on in Ukraine. And again, those organizations were able to, that same preparation in many cases around enabling work from home and enabling a distributed workforce were employed again. So, there's genuine value in an organization investing in and around an understanding of itself, because, it would appear the size of these challenges, the speed of these challenges, it's getting greater and greater. And I'll talk a bit later about broader political challenges, but there's genuine value in that preparation, and that preparation is on many levels. It's about organizational preparation, process preparation, systems preparation. The underpinning thing is knowing who you are, knowing what you are, understanding your data, and getting ready for stuff.
Tim, I'm genuinely interested. What are some of the attributes that companies that are being successful in preparing, what are they doing differently, or what leadership skills or qualities do they have that the ones that are not prepared? What's the big difference?
I mean, I think on one level, it often comes down to I should say, quality and experience of leadership and management.
Yeah.
We've got clients who spend time wargaming for things, who will take time out of executives' diaries to plan for negative events, that will proactively invest in systems change or process harmonization, not because they have to, but because they know that this is about getting fit for the future. And that's a lot of how I feel about enterprise architecture. It's a lot broader than just, right, how do my systems plug together? Looking holistically, this is about how is the organization structured, how is the operating model structured, so that you're fit for whatever comes next. And organizations can wait until they get knocked over by something before they make a change, or they can proactively constantly be looking to innovate and evolve how they are. And that to me is the difference. It's a lot of it comes down to leadership and management choice. Are you going to be that sort of organization that's constantly striving to be better, or are you going to be that sort of organization that's totally happy doing what you did yesterday until someone comes and knocks you over the head with a big bat?
That value of preparation, I think, is really critical, and EA seems to be right at the heart of that. Ollie, I'm curious, why aren't we seeing more of a focus on EA, more hiring of enterprise architects, more investment in this area? What needs to change?
Well, I think we are. I think we are seeing that focus, actually, more so now than we have in the past. I was sort of reflecting on this the other day. Even if we consider kind of the number, from an Orbis perspective, the number of attendees at, say, Gartner EA summits over the last 5 years, we've seen that, at least double, if not more. And from an Orbis kind of, software vendor market perspective, we see far more vendors in our space now, which definitely speaks to the growth and relevance of EA and its importance for all the reasons that we talked about. Historically, though, I think EA had a bit of a bad rep, bit of an image problem. It saw itself as the technology police, perhaps buried itself a bit within the IT function, as opposed to being that business partner to drive strategic change. I've certainly seen a big evolution during my time at Orbis and working with Orbis customers. The most successful EA teams that we work with are very much at the coalface of their organization's digital transformations, and they're engaged at quite a senior level in their businesses. So I'm thinking about a large US bank that we work with whose EA function is absolutely flat out directing and guiding a lot of the application designs that are fundamentally transforming the way that bank is engaging with its customers. I'm thinking about a large insurance company that is pursuing a very aggressive acquisition strategy that's really leaning into enterprise architecture to help the business to see value from those investments. So I'd say that EA is now very much more in focus and needs to continue to articulate itself as that sort of strategic business partner.
Tim, what's your view on EA and the teams that are supporting some of these changes?
So I definitely echo Ollie's points here that
yeah.
EA has been pigeonholed as a sort of quite specific and inaccessible IT term. I see it much more broadly and advise my clients accordingly that this should be EA should be involved in wider questions of business performance, and the resilience, the stability, the agility of your enterprise architecture should be something that the whole C-suite is interested in, not just a CIO or a CTO, because a lot of C-suite understands kind of organizational architecture of a business, right? They think in terms of which people do I have where, and that's an important dimension. But the way that your systems operate can fundamentally change your business agility. The data model and the way that data flows through your organization, that's a dimension which I think increasingly members of the C-suite get. The importance of data, I actually think in some ways they're getting more clued into the importance of systems and systems architecture. You speak to your average CEO and ask whether or not their application stack should be in the cloud. They don't really care. You ask them whether or not, should your applications be built and architected in such a way that you can put all of your business information in one place and make data-backed decisions. Oh yeah, they're keen on that, and they need to understand holistically enterprise architecture pulls all of this together. I'm working with a large medical business at the moment, and they need to radically transform themselves, and they can't. They don't actually know who they are. They don't know how many people they have. They don't know how their functions are structured. They don't understand their systems landscape. But most importantly, their data is awful. And therefore they have to rely on an organization like mine to come in and kind of fundamentally uplift their understanding of themselves before they can make any change. It's not a resilient business. It's been incredibly successful, I have to say, but it's not, as it stands today, it's not a resilient business, and that's why we need to think about EA in its kind of broadest sense here around helping organizations just be fit.
Yeah. So to that point about being fit, what are some of the things that you coach businesses on to become more operationally resilient?
So, I mean, a really obvious one is to talk about topics of digital transformation, because and it feels like something we've been talking about for a long time. It's something we're going to be talking about for an awful long time to come. We see it in back to Ollie's point, we see it particularly in periods of economic adversity. We see disruption occur, and that disruption is often a new digital delivery model or a new digital business model or a new way of working. And if you're going to be operationally resilient, you need to have an answer for that. You either need to be innovating yourself, or at the point where you are disrupted, you need to have the ability to respond quickly. And the reality is you might not know where that disruption is going to come from. You are going to be necessarily surprised, but it's about how do you respond from that point of being surprised, and what's your ability to innovate internally. But it's not just about digital maturity. It's not just about where you are on your digital transformation. Pandemics, recessions, sort of global conflicts. These are cyber hacking, cybersecurity issues. These are all things which increasingly are testing the businesses in our economy in just sort of ever more and varied ways. And to be operationally resistant, you've got to be proactively looking at where your weaknesses are, thinking about where as a business you want to invest and build up that level of resilience. Even if you don't necessarily have a strategy to counter a problem, are you fit to be able to respond at a moment's notice to whatever business pressure it is that occurs?
Yep.
What are you seeing, Ollie? I mean, you've seen a lot of organizations that have had to prepare for regulation. You've seen a lot of businesses that are looking at as is and to be versions of themselves. What's working in the company to
No, I mean, I find myself not nodding along furiously. I think, what is resilience? In some industries, banking, for example, means something quite specific. So, in the UK, for example, there's, particular new legislation, regulations around the services, critical business services that banks manage that can really impact the economy and impact consumers. And there are, quite strict requirements around how those services need to be monitored. Of course, the best way to be resilient is to design for resilience up front. In other words, to build things that don't break. But that's often not possible because in lots of industries, there is a lot of legacy technology and a lot of other things that impede resilience. And so, in the absence of that upfront systems design, you need visibility of your risks. You need an understanding of how technology supports business processes, and that's absolutely essential to be able to respond to events if they occur. So in other words, prevention is better than a cure, but the cure necessitates clarity and transparency over risks and the IT and business landscape. And that's exactly what's, coming back to enterprise architecture, that's what EA should deliver. Now, in a much broader sense, taking that term resilience, I do believe that digital transformation is absolutely key to commercial and competitive resilience from a kind of market and positioning perspective, as we talked about.
Great.
I mean, Ollie, I'd echo that. I think that clarity you're describing, if nothing else, clarity leads to agility.
Yeah.
And agility is a core component of resilience. It's not the only part of it, but it's a core component of it. But if you don't have the clarity, you're sunk before you start.
Indeed.
We titled this webinar Recession, Resiliency, and the Importance of Clarity. So Tim, thank you for bringing it full circle. We have about 6 minutes left. I'd love to give some time for people who have questions. And again, if you have a question, please put it into the panel and we will get an answer for you. But let's just close this up. I'd love to know, Tim and Ollie, what's the bottom line? What advice do you have? What perspective do you want to leave people with about recession, resiliency, and clarity as we close up this webinar? Tim, why don't you start?
I think, listen, for me, it's a bit negative, I'm afraid, but I mean, certainly not since the Cold War do I think we've had a period of such unprecedented socio-economic and political uncertainty and risk. And there's many people in the workplace who have never operated in a period of such uncertainty, of which recession is just the latest thing to worry about. It's going to be rough, and questions about digital transformation, questions about your operational resilience are going. Then to the extent that anybody thought they were optional before, I don't think they're going to be optional in the next 5 to 10 years.
Ollie, what's your take?
Yeah, well, definitely there is the doom and gloom, but as I said, also fantastic opportunities for some, and at the center of that opportunity is the role that the transformation that technology plays in driving both efficiency and also in innovation. And EA is a critical partner to making that sort of change and embracing technology and making that successful. So, the benefits of getting that right are highly material for organizations if they can do it. Even if we just focus on the benefit of EA in the context of decision making and agility, but also efficiency, application rationalization. We talked about some of the the statistics that Orbis has uncovered with Forrester. So, bottom line, organizations with effective EAs are more resilient, they're more agile, they're ultimately better to position themselves regardless of the macroeconomic context.
Great. So just to summarize, what I heard today was value and preparation is key to building a more resilient business in the face of a recession. Enterprise architecture really has that unique viewpoint between what the business is doing and what IT and technology is powering the business. Ollie mentioned our Forrester Total Economic Impact Study. You can go to our website to download a complimentary copy today. And also how you respond in the face of adversity, in the face of change, is really a huge differentiator and opens up opportunity or risk for your business. Having an enterprise architecture platform can help you in that planning and that communication and collaboration, which is so key to being able to change your business. So with that said, it looks like we have some time for questions. Again, please add any questions you have to the panel. Our first question is really about, let me just read this here. It's, how are people making the case for enterprise architecture? What are some ways that they are making the business case to actually get investment? Ollie, this might be one for you, but Tim, I'd love your thoughts as well, as you've worked with a number of different companies in the midst of transformation.
Yeah, the case, you can make the case very successfully based on a cost and efficiency argument. So, 20% of applications being sunsetted over 3 years is definitely an easy way to endorse the role that EA and an EA platform can play to driving efficiency. But also a value-based argument around your ability to be agile and to embrace innovation and bring products to market faster, deliver services better to your customers. So, what we see in terms of funding for our platform, we see that's typically coming from, the budgets of chief digital officers, but also information security, CIOs, of course. So a variety of different places based on that kind of value or efficiency-based argument.
And Tim, how are you seeing people make the business case for investment, for digital transformation, for enterprise architecture?
So it's, I have to say, it's much more often as Ollie was describing, it's the growth dimension. It's strategies that are predicated on major digital transformation and key stakeholders making the value point that an organization that lacks a strong EA capability is going to move slower, is going to make more mistakes, it's going to waste more money. That actually having a strong enterprise architecture organization that's appropriately tooled just de-risks that transformation, accelerates that transformation, and increasingly, I don't think it's less and less. It's a question of should we go and get some enterprise architects? It's a question of how many do we need?
Yeah. Well, we're right at time, but we will get your questions answered for anyone who submitted a question, so stay tuned. And it was a pleasure speaking with you today, Tim and Ollie. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all who's listened in for joining Orbis for our webinar on recession, resiliency, and clarity. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks all. Thank you. Bye.